Hey guys, how's it going? Ted Hentschke here with DreadCentral.com, and I'll be bringing you this year's E3 2016 recap. There was a lot of stuff that got shown this year at E3, and I wanted to start with one of the biggest announcements, which was Resident Evil 7. There was a lot of speculation going into the show that Resident Evil 7 was going to be announced. People weren't really sure if it was going to be one of the more action-y ones or going back to survival horror. But, you know, it premiered at the Sony press conference, and turns out we're going back to survival horror. So, kudos to Capcom for listening to fans that said that they wanted to go back to the, more old-school, horror-driven instead of the zombie explosion fest it's been for the last... since Resident Evil 4. Yeah, so cool news there. Some things to note. It was announced at the Sony press conference, but it is not a PS4 exclusive. It is going to be coming out on the PC and Xbox One as well. Now, it was announced during the Sony VR presentation event, and so we can expect. So it's going to come out on the Sony VR for sure. It is also being designed to be on other VR platforms, but they haven't said which ones yet. Now, we know that on the PC, the Steam current focused VR is the HTC Vive. We know Oculus is also going to be on the PC as well. But what's interesting about this is by not saying what VR platform they're on, it shows that between like Oculus and Vive and whatnot, that they're still in talks about that, and that there are VR announcements in the future about what's going to be on what system, compatibility and stuff like that they just weren't stating at this show. So keep your eyes open for those kinds of announcements because of this. But yeah, more about Resident Evil 7 now. So I actually got to play the demo on the Sony VR, and the demo itself was housed in this giant house. They made a big production of it this year. On the show floor, basically almost all of the Capcom's space was taken up by this big house that they used to house the VR demo, and both the VR and the regular demo. So just letting you know that the demo is available now on the PlayStation Network if you want to try it out. But they were keeping it pretty much under wraps at the actual event. They didn't have any floor demos that you could actually see or record. It was all very behind closed doors. And if you wanted to get a ticket, you really had to show up at the convention center at 10 a.m. right when the doors opened, because this thing was a hot ticket item the whole expo. So, to those of you that did get to see it, congratulations, and you sure are dedicated. Now, I got to see it because I've worked with Capcom before, so they invited me on to do a hands-on, and I got to talk to the team for a little bit. And one of the things they wanted to impress upon me was that just like Resident Evil 4 changed how you fundamentally thought about Resident Evil games, Resident Evil 7 is going to do the same thing, but in a different direction. They really want this to be a new take on the whole Resident Evil brand. So that's pretty cool. I do like that they care enough to really try something risky with this. So what was the demo like? So, if you don't have a PS4 or you just want to know what the VR experience was like, you start off, you're dropped into this room, you wake up in this room, and it's decrepit, dark, there's a staticky TV, and you're given some hints right away as to where you're supposed to go and what you're supposed to do. So the staticky TV, and it says there's no tape in the player. So, now you know that you gotta go look for a tape. You see a fuse box that's kind of lit up, it says missing a fuse. Okay, you gotta look for a fuse. There's a lot to see and explore in such a short demo. There was a mannequin finger I found at one point. Still don't know what that does yet. But, if you want to, you can get through the whole thing pretty quickly. There's nothing blocking your progress except for, a couple locked doors. But you can get to the area with the key that leads you to the videotape that leads you to the exit pretty quickly. You can be done with the whole thing in 5-10 minutes, even with the cutscenes. There are a lot of secrets to explore. As I said, I found that mannequin finger, but there were a number of locked drawers. I never found the fuse for the fuse box. I was trying to go through pretty quickly so that I could see the rest of the expo. But yeah, there's a lot to explore there. So in terms of functional gameplay, this is a sitting down VR experience. This is not like the Paranormal Activity VR game, where in that you you use the controller to walk into a room, but then you actually explore the room by physically moving around. You know, the Vive, HTC Vive is set up in the corners of your room, so it creates like a 3D virtual space so you can actually walk around. You know, if you want to look at something, you can reach down, pick it up, inspect it like this. That's the Paranormal Activity game. In the Resident Evil game, it's not like that. You use the headset to mostly just observe the surroundings, and you use a more traditional style of movement, you know, up, down, left, right, you know, to move around. And most of the environment is decorative. It's atmospheric. It's non-interactive. So if I see a pill bottle on a table, usually I won't be able to pick it up unless it's a key item. You know, I can't just explore around, which, you know, is a more focused experience, and it's just it functions differently because of the headset, I think. Other than that, they said that there wasn't any combat in the demo, but the team said that there will be combat in the main game, and they want to not only redefine Resident Evil, but redefine this first-person horror experience, because we've had first-person horror experiences with games like Outlast and Amnesia that are sneaky. You know, you got to sneak around, you got to not be found, or else the monsters will kill you. And they said that they found that to be less scary, because once you're found and killed, you go back to the checkpoint, and it's scary while you're being chased, but you lose the tension as soon as you're caught and killed, because then you just kind of realize that it's all a puzzle, and it becomes an obstacle rather than a tense experience. So what they want is to bring some terror into the actual fighting of the enemies, you know, sneaking up behind them, whacking them on the head, actually fending them off. They want that to be the tense and terrifying experience, not necessarily just hiding in a closet. Obvious elephant in the room is going to be PT. This is pretty clearly filling a void left by PT, and they kind of know this. And by kind of, I mean they definitely know this. They were a little bit weird every time I brought up PT. They wanted to change the subject really quick. They didn't, like, say, don't bring up PT when talking about this. But I think that they don't want to be in the shadow of PT. They clearly were inspired by... I don't want to say inspired by it, because I don't really know the development history, but it's clearly filling the hole that Konami left in all of our hearts when they canceled Silent Hills. Similar to PT, this is not part of the full actual game, but unlike PT, this is actually supposed to be showing what the actual gameplay is going to be like. So PT was a totally different thing. Silent Hills is supposed to be like a third-person game. PT was all in first-person. This is a representation of what the final product is going to look, feel, and play like. So, but it is the prologue to it. It takes place before the actual events of the game. And storyline-wise, I'm not exactly sure what I can or even should tell you. There's some trippy stuff going on. The basic premise is easy enough to understand, but there are some questions I have about the difference between the recorded world and the real world. When you play it, you'll see what I mean. Which you definitely should do. It's a cool demo. It showed off the tech really well, so, you know, when the PSVR drops in October, it'll be a great demo to play with that. And as it stands right now, it's cool because it brings us back to this horror core that used to be in Resident Evil. You know, you didn't know what was around every corner with the fixed camera. They're changing that. You know, it's not a fixed camera, it's a first-person game, but that tension is they're bringing that back into the world of Resident Evil, and I'm really happy about that. So go ahead and check it out. It'll drop into stores on January 24th. That's the release date currently. So I'll have a full review then, but, you know, until then, I'll let you know the new news as I do. So anyways, thanks guys for checking in. Check out my next video whenever it's up, and I'll see you later.